Hello and welcome to the Arsenal BiteSize Podcast. I'm your host Clayton at Clates AFC on Twitter, here to review what do we call it? Stalemate? Defensive masterclass. Here to review the defensive masterclass that Arsenal put up at the Etihad against Man City. I know 0-0. Nothing really to write home about for the neutral, but fuck the neutral. We're not here to please everyone. I think we spent so many years going to the likes of the Etihad, to Anfield, and we just got absolutely walloped. And I think there's a real shift now, which you're seeing with this Arsenal team. And even you go as far as last season, like the way the season ended, I still think a lot of it was Saliba being out and Rob Holding having to deputise. I think there was an element of not naivety, but like inexperience. But I think the whole Arsenal bottled it was so overblown, and the kind of soft underbelly narratives. I think it was mostly the Saliba holding factor. But you look, that was only 12 months ago, and you look at how different this Arsenal team is now. They're dispelling these narratives, and even the way we battled against Porto. There's been multiple games in Arteta's era where we've fought back from both behind and in drawing positions to get last-minute winners. This team is different, and I think this, for me, was perfect to announce it to the world. It is not often that you reduce a City side, well, they're the fucking treble winners, for God's sake, to just one shot on target, which came from Nathan Ake. And before I go in, I want to do like a player-by-player review. And I feel like that will mostly cover off the key moments from the game. But I've got Arsenal's match report here that they put out at the end of each of the games, and like some of the stats are just mind blowing. It's our first point away to City since 2016. We stopped Man City scoring at home for the first time in 57 games. Like, that is absolutely insane. Not only that, but Man City actually failed to score in a Premier League game at the Etihad for the first time since a 2-0 defeat to Palace in October 2021. They had scored in 47 straight home league matches prior to this game. What other cool stats have Arsenal got here? It was Man City's first 0-0 draw in the Premier League since March 2022 against Palace. It ended a run of 75 consecutive league games without any being goalless. What else have they got here? This match saw just 3 shots on target, 1 for Man City, 2 for Arsenal, one of just 3 games to see 3 or fewer in the Premier League this season. So, I get it where the neutrals are coming from, but I think that for me, it's the context of everything we've heard about Arsenal from outsiders, and just going there, and we're not going to get bullied. Like, this was it was an absolute defensive masterclass. Like, I've mentioned some of those stats there that Arsenal have put in the match report, and that's not normal. Like, people don't do that. The stats are the stats. It's you hear those things about 75 consecutive games, 47 games in one of the stats, 57 in another one of them. This Arsenal team, I tweeted it at the end of the game. It is one of the best defensive sides in world football, and I'd say we're the best defense in the Premier League. Like, you don't do this to Man City. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I'll go in and talk a bit about how I felt as a fan in the ground, but because I know a lot of people are like, I didn't get the feeling City were going to score. I wouldn't say I was that comfortable, but I think that was more just general fan anxiety from me. I described it to my mate who was next to me as like, it's almost it was like a boxing match where City were just jabbing and jabbing and jabbing at us. But I felt quite uncomfortable in how many jabs we were taking. So even though they were playing outside of our shape and it was outside of the box, I felt like, sure, there could be any slip up here from us because the margin for error is so minimal at that level. Any slip up and a right straight or a right hook comes in there. And so I was quite nervous about it. But obviously, once you look at the outcome and it's 0-0, and you look at them only having one clear shot on target, which was the Ake chance from the corner. And then you look at the stats. So just for reference, I'm using FOTMob here. It says City had an XG of 1.02 to our 0.66, 12 shots to our 6, and then, as already mentioned, 1 shot on target to our 2. But I've seen different models. Like, I've seen some that say Man City had an XG of less than 1. So the point still stands. We nullified them to nearly nothing. And it was just an absolutely outstanding defensive performance. I'm glad I think it was Bernardo Silva. He was quite complimentary about us. And one thing I'm glad he said, because I feel like this hasn't been picked up in general narratives, was Arsenal's ability to press high, but also then defend like compact and deep. And I'm paraphrasing. They didn't say that word for word, but I feel like the pressing high has been lost in the analysis in most mainstream media outlets. And everyone's just focused on the fact that Arsenal in some periods defended with a 6. We, in air quotes, parked the bus and this and that. But I feel like there were moments in the game where we were really aggressively going man-to-man, and Odegaard covered lots of space. Havertz, they were doing that thing where they pressed us to. Rice was going aggressive. And you could see there were moments where even the one where we won the ball back and I think it was Odegaard played Saka in, and Saka crossed it across the box and Jesus couldn't quite get there. That came from aggressive pressing, but all of Rice, White and Saliba went man-to-man really high up. So I think it was a really smart tactical performance where there were elements of, you go and you attack and you press really aggressively high up, but then know when to just sit off and have City play outside of your shape and not let them get in the pockets. And you look at the likes of like Foden, De Bruyne, like they were anonymous. Like De Bruyne always scares me when he's in that kind of half space, but that's just because of De Bruyne. You know, he's got that ability to deliver a pinpoint cross out of anywhere, but that's all it felt it was going to come from, a cross. That's all it felt for. I didn't feel like he was able to get the ball and run through our midfield like he did last season and feed in Haaland. And a lot of that is obviously Declan Rice, like absolutely phenomenal player, man. But a lot of it was that. And I think there were quite a few occasions where De Bruyne was running through and then Rice just steaming in and clearing up like a Hoover. Just outstanding defensive performance. If I had to summarize, that's exactly it for me. Like, I'm so impressed with what we did defensively because everyone, myself included, was saying, like, you go in here, it's just a must not lose. A draw still keeps us there or thereabouts. Liverpool have obviously gone top of the league. They're on 67 points. We're now on 65, 1 point ahead of Man City, who are on 64. So for me, this was just go there, don't lose. Like, we've taken 4 points from City, 4 points from Liverpool, nullified City to next to nothing in those 2 games, destroyed Liverpool at home, rode our luck a little bit in the away game. But again, it's year-on-year improvement that we're seeing. And for me, this was absolutely just must not lose. I think I'm ever so slightly disappointed in how little we were able to create going forward. I knew that we would be under the cosh and we'd have to dig in deep. But I thought that on the ball, certain players, their first touch just kind of let them down for the next action. And we weren't as secure in the ball. I think Odegaard even said this in his post-match interview, that we played a little bit deeper than we'd planned for. And I think that was because City were, that first 20 minutes, they were unbelievable. Like, they had us pinned and they're pressing. It almost felt like they had an extra man on the pitch. Everyone got the ball and were like shepherded into a dark alleyway. You couldn't get out. And I think that's why Saliba looked a bit ropey in the start. And we just couldn't exit anywhere. And I think a lot of that was City just absolutely unbelievable in the way they approached it. I think we had a spell in after half time where, because even being in the ground, like it was, you could feel the wave of Arsenal. It's almost like the thermometer was rising on us, because I was in the lower tier and it's like really quite narrow and compact, whereas the upper tier is obviously a lot more spacious. So I don't know what the atmosphere was like up there, but I was quite disappointed with our away end in the lower tier. But there was this wave in the second half where I want to say it was between the 55th and 65th minute, where it felt like the LA chant was just going around, and like the players feel like they were getting stuck in. Jorginho went and did those 2 free tackles where probably should have got booked. Rice was clamping in. Like, everyone was just winning the ball back. Saka was getting played in. There were the odd chances and half chances that were coming, and there was just a bit more like momentum from us. And that's why I feel like that could have been our moment to capitalize maybe. But We couldn't sustain that pressure, unfortunately. But again, it's not a criticism. It's just I feel like we were capable of playing a little bit higher up and doing more with the ball. But again, what Odegaard said in his post-match interview, when you're defending that deep and you combine that with what Arteta said to the players pre-match about, guys, you have to be willing to watch them passing the ball 30 passes, get it back, and then lose it and do that again. It's emotionally taxing, and you've seen it when we do it to other teams, and like we do our analysis, and we're like, that must be so exhausting to play against us, and like we've kind of seen it firsthand. So, on one hand, yeah, sure, I am slightly disappointed with what we did going forward, while being incredibly proud of what we did defensively. But I think it's just acknowledging that within the context of the game, it was a ridiculously difficult game that the margin for error was so minimal. But yeah, that's my brief summary of the game. I think before I go player by player, just touch on like a couple more chances. I think Jesus had a couple of like decent half chances. Well, no, I'll do that in the player by player section actually. So yeah, lineup comes out, and I think it was what I predicted, other than I had gone Martinelli or Trossard left wing instead of Jesus. But I know a lot of people, especially on Twitter, actually predicted Jesus to start left wing. So yeah, lineup came out. It was Raya, White, Saliba, Gabriel, Kivior, and midfield of Declan Rice and Jorginho with Odegaard next to them. And then the front three was obviously Gabriel, Jesus, Havertz, and Saka. Player by player, I feel like that's the easiest way to cover this game off while doing a solo review. Raya, shaky. I think his handling was fantastic, like crosses coming in, like it stuck to him really well. I think he was smart in periods. Instead of going aggressive and trying to hit us on the counter, he slowed the team down, just hand on the ball, foot on the ball, slow it down, reset. Distribution was dodgy. He was slipping around a bit. I don't know if that was his fault or if the area around him was like overly watered or something, but I thought his distribution was disappointing. But again, City's press was just phenomenal. So not the best day at the office, but he had more value in that Arsenal team yesterday than Ramsdale would have. And not to make it this AVB like player X versus player Y thing, but yeah, Raya's value is really clear to see, even when he's not at his best. Ben White, fucking brilliant. I loved this performance from him because I think, especially the context of everything that's been going on with him and the general narratives around England. And yeah, I feel like the whole nation's just kind of been on his back, and he just rocks up to the Etihad, does what he does, goes home, like winds up Jack Grealish, winds up Phil Foden, two players who are not fulfilling their potential, given how everyone talks about them and the price tag of one of them. Ben White just rocks up, does his thing, goes home. And he was a fantastic outlet in a couple of occasions as well. Like when we got the ball and we couldn't really get out, he was making unbelievable runs down the right, and obviously clipped in one for Jesus where he hit the side netting. My mind's gone blank, but I think he clipped in another one in another period of the game, but just always made himself available offensively and was always back in position defensively as well. Phil Foden didn't really get a sniff out of him. Like I said, anonymous Phil Foden, and Ben White was brilliant. Saliba and Gabriel, mate, what a partnership. They are absolutely ridiculous. I actually thought Saliba was quite disappointing on the ball, especially both in the first phase, but in the first half. I think he really grew into the game, but on the ball, I thought he was really disappointing. Just looked a bit unsure on where he was going to go next. Pass selections were sometimes wrong. But then obviously on Sky he got man of the match, and like every duel I think he basically won. Like I saw a graphic, I should have had it in front of me to do this pod, but I saw a graphic on Sky where it was like a few different metrics and he was first. So yeah, brilliant performance from him. But no, I'll tone that down. I personally don't think it was a brilliant performance. I thought it was a very good performance and he battled well. For his distribution was personally a little bit disappointing. And to add to that, Gabriel, fucking phenomenal. I actually thought Gabriel was better than Saliba in this game. Again, like similar thing as Saliba, battled so well, won his duels. but I actually thought on the ball he was a little bit more assured. I'm sure he gave it away a couple of times as well, but I felt like he was always looking for the kind of right pass. And yeah, when he got the ball, I just felt like there was a little bit more conviction in him. But I just love seeing this development in Gabriel. We've gone from watching him like cost us in games, make mistakes, lose his temper a little bit, and he's just. Someone tweeted this yesterday. He's just channeling that aggression in the right way. Where he's been one of the best centre backs in the world this season. Like I'd say he's been the best in the league maybe this year. But in the world, he's up there as well, and it's really nice to see them two as a partnership getting their flowers. Like you genuinely see, like they complement each other so well, and you're genuinely seeing people saying things and acknowledging them from outside of Arsenal circles as well. So that's really good. But yeah, what a warrior, man! Absolutely brilliant performance from him. Kivior, mixed bag. I think he did well in moments, but there were some moments where Bernardo Silva had him on absolute. I wouldn't say had him on toast, but he had the better of him. And I think Bernardo Silva, even though he's so heavily left-footed dominant, his agility and his ability to just like drop his shoulder and go one way and then the other. You always talk about show these people on the outside, but like you can do that and he'll still just chop and come on the inside and your hips are going to pop. Like it's such a difficult task. But I thought Kivior had an okay performance. Yeah, that's it really. Nothing really to write home about. I thought he did well overall, but Bernardo Silva gave him a really difficult challenge. And having Tomiyasu come on, I thought was absolutely perfect management. I thought that was managed to an absolute T because City obviously made their subs on the 61st minute, which was Foden and Kovacic going off for Doku and Grealish. And obviously Doku was just pinned on Kivior and then literally... And Kivior actually did quite well in a 1v1, literally just before he came off, to be fair to him. But then we reacted to those subs and Jorginho, who I'll talk about in a sec, went off for Partey, who I'll also talk about. And Tomiyasu came on for Kivior, and I thought that was just really smart squad management and game management. React to what you're seeing in front of you. Tomiyasu's a brilliant 1v1 defender. And it's nice to just get minutes in his tank while we've got... I've lost track of how many games we're going to have in this in this April period. But it was just good to get someone like him minutes. His strengths in terms of being a 1v1 defender. And I thought that was just managed really well. Midfield, let me start with Declan Rice. This guy has changed my world. The way he defends is absolutely insane. Like, yeah, I spoke about De Bruyne and him not really having that space. Like last season, I feel like in between our defense and Thomas Partey, there was just gaps where De Bruyne would go on the blind side, run through the central areas. Declan Rice makes that impossible to happen. He's a hoover. That is it. He's literally a hoover. And he gives us that, like, the boys to men analogy we're seeing with this season. I think a lot of that is Declan Rice, and I hate the word, but aura. Like, we've got that. It's a team of giants, like physical athletes, and Declan Rice just epitomizes that. And I thought he was absolutely fantastic. Just grabs games literally by the neck, does it himself sometimes, and that midfield, he stamped his authority on it. Jorginho, I actually thought this was a game that passed him by. I said to my friend when we were in the away end that this was purely a hindsight thing. In the predicted lineups, I put Jorginho. Why did I put Jorginho? I thought the combination of Rice and Jorginho would be enough, as well as Odegaard in certain phases, would be enough for us to dominate territory and the ball. We had a lot less of the ball than I thought we would in this game. And as a result, I felt like the game didn't play to Jorginho's strengths. And what I actually said during the game to my friend was, I wish we had a more athletic midfield option available, because that game screamed for duels. And I think when we did get the ball, we were so deep that Jorginho was being pressed from left, right, centre that he wasn't able to have enough of the ball to actually dictate the tempo, which is what he's so good at. And if I was to just look at his stats, so he had 22 touches on the ball. That's just not enough, right? And you look at Declan Rice, for example, who had 45. What did Martin Odegaard have? Martin Odegaard had 47. So I think for me, that summarizes why I felt the game past Jorginho by. Nothing wrong with him. Within our structure, he's fine. But as a team, I think City had more territory than we thought they would. And as a result, Jorginho wasn't able to do what he does. And that's why I loved the sub of Thomas Partey. And I've seen really mixed opinions on this. I thought Partey's on-the-ball ability was absolutely fantastic. I thought when he came on, sure, like this says it all, by the way, Partey had 17 touches. I think that was the thing. Partey, sure, he looked rusty. There was that one run from De Bruyne where I was like, oh, Jesus, just take a tactical foul, take a yellow card. Like, Partey's positioning sometimes can be a little bit suspect, but his on the ball availability and ability, his ability to drop into certain spaces, make himself available, he's a release valve. There was one occasion where 2-3 people are pressing him from different directions. He checks over his shoulder, drops one way, and then he's gone, and then he plays Odegaard in through the lines, and that was the chance for Trossard at the end. There was another one where I can't remember seeing this on the highlights, but I was in the stadium, so maybe I had a distorted view of it because it was the other end to me. But Partey had the ball back to goal and back to City goal. Sorry, so he's facing our goal, and there's people pressing him from different directions, and he's calm, puts his foot on the ball, turns in a different direction, and then off we go. And I thought that was such an encouraging cameo in the sense of what he is going to give us in this run-in as an option that we've missed. And I spoke about athleticism. I don't think Partey's the most athletic, but is he more athletic than Jorginho? Yes. And I think you look at the midfield that played in the Community Shield, it was Partey and Rice, and between them, I think they're able to, like, Rice does a lot of the heavy lifting, but Partey, he's not a minnow, right? I think if you get him match fit, he's able to contribute in a more than healthy way in that midfield dynamic. So I thought that was a really encouraging cameo for me personally. I know match sharpness, he didn't look great. He looked like he was, he didn't look match sharp, but on the ball, it's something that we needed. And I think if he was fit, like when I spoke about the athleticism thing and wanting another midfielder, it's because this was a game where we needed to aggressively win the ball, but then have enough touches to actually reset. And I think that's where we lacked it with Jorginho, because we had to he was a bit of a passenger as a result. I think if Partey was fit enough to start, we wouldn't have seen that same problem. So it's a shame he wasn't fit enough to start, to be fair. But yeah, great option to have back for the run-in. Martin Odegaard, mate, the way this guy leads the press and actually he just orchestrates it, but the ground he covers as well is an absolute joke. I don't think I've ever seen, I know he doesn't play as a traditional number 10, but I'm just going to describe him as a number 10 for us. I don't think I've ever seen a creative player of his ilk work so hard. Like, it is genuinely insane. And like, there was one moment I actually felt really sorry for Havertz. Havertz did like a really long sprint, and Odegaard was giving him such a bollocking because he wanted him in one certain area he wanted him in a certain area and he didn't quite get there. So yeah, off the ball, I thought Odegaard was like the catalyst for this insane defensive performance. On the ball, I thought he was a little bit disappointing. What I spoke about a few minutes ago about when Arsenal did regain the ball, I felt like our first and second actions just weren't good enough. Like, the touch wasn't quite crisp enough. Some passes weren't clear enough. But yeah, again, like, you add in the context of what I've already said about Odegaard's post-match presser and interview, and it's easier said than done when I'm sat here on my sofa reviewing a game. So mixed performance, but off the ball, absolutely incredible. Just wish we were able to get him on the ball more than we did, and he was able to do more with it. Front three, Jesus, I want to start with, because what a shift that was. I thought he put in an incredible shift here defensively and worked so hard to protect Kivior and come back and try and double up on Bernardo Silva, who was causing a lot of problems. So I thought he did phenomenally well defensively. Offensively, still sometimes the moments where he over dribbles, overplays, holds on to it a little bit too long. But I thought the clip from Ben White to him, I thought he chested it really well, just didn't quite connect with it because he was like leaning back. So he dragged it slightly wide. But looking at really fine margins there, I thought, overall, really, really healthy performance. And it's interesting, like, again, you look at the run-in, like, I I think Jesus absolutely should and will start games at number 9, but I just look at him now and what Havertz gives us as well. It's just a really nice rotational pairing that just gives us something different rather than the kind of predictability patterns we used to get into with the same style of play, the same profile of player and the same zones. So even Jesus putting his hand up to put in a shift left wing, we've seen him do something at right wing before for us and City. It's just really good option to have now. And I think same as Thomas Partey and Zinchenko to an extent as well. I think Jesus has become a bit underrated in the Arsenal fan base, to be honest. And we're very quick to kind of dismiss certain people as starters, but like, can we just accept that these guys have quality that we can use in a packed schedule against certain opposition in specific game states? Like, that's it. That's all we need to be looking at right now. Havertz, I thought he put in a heck of a shift as well. Worked really hard, but do you know what? Fair play to City's defense. They handled him better than I thought they would, is what I would say. I looked at him who bullied Kanate and Van Dijk, and I wouldn't say he bullied the City defense. I'd say, again, he had so much to do. He was just like a release valve, right? He was just having to go up and win every aerial duel he could. He was then having to make it stick on the floor when the ball came into him. Yeah, like really tough job, but I'm glad we went with him because he was that release valve for us, which Jesus is capable of doing, but obviously because of Martinelli, because Trossard clearly wasn't quite trusted to start, and I think a lot of it was Jesus's defensive work, we needed to go with Havertz. So yeah, mixed performance, like on the ball, not his best, but he worked really hard and he gives us a different option, which City have to think about. And I don't think the game necessarily pans out the way it does if we don't start Havertz up top. It's a weird domino effect that we have with these people. Saka, oh man, I'm concerned about his fitness, you know. Arteta's basically said, obviously, well, we all know Saka was withdrawn from England duty, obviously. That was led by England, but you can see he wasn't fit. Arteta said 90 minutes was too much for him. Be interesting to see what he does on Wednesday against Luton. We're going to do a Luton preview pod, and I think rotation FC is going to be a big talking point because a lot of people are talking about that at the minute. But yeah, I'll cover that in the Luton preview. But Saka is, I'm slightly worried because he looked knackered. I thought he did well with his availability. The one thing though, and I may be nitpicking here, when we won the ball back in that second half and Odegaard played him through, I feel like he could have maybe like taken one more touch, like or really connect the pass. And I don't know if it was on Havertz or Jesus to make clearer movement or connect with the pass that he put in, but I feel like we could have done slightly better there. Yeah, Saka, he did the best he could, but I'm worried about his fitness. I'm really, really worried. I think for the run-in, I am so comfortable with our defensive and midfield options and our ability to rotate in different areas there. I'm concerned about the forward line. You see, like Martinelli yesterday, like the fact that I know it was only 6 minutes later that he came on than Trossard for Jesus, but I think that was partly enforced because of Saka, right? Because Martinelli was actually fit. Martinelli's coming on instead of Trossard, isn't he? And I think we really missed Martinelli yesterday. It's the sort of game I spoke about Partey if he was fit enough to start. I think this was the same thing with Martinelli. If he was fit enough, he's in, and we could have exploited them. I really believe that. I really don't think we had that out ball that we would have had if Martinelli was there. Because like when Keville got the ball, for example, we only had Gabriel Jesus there, and like I spoke about someone who can hold the width and be disciplined enough to just hold that width and run into space. And that's not Jesus's game, right? So really missed Martinelli. On Trossard, I know I'm jumping a bit here, just going back to Jesus and the sub. Obviously, Trossard came on. Some really nice touches, some moments. I'll be honest, in the ground, my first instinct wasn't cross it to Martinelli, and I don't know if it was an angle thing. I didn't feel like it was onto me. Having watched the highlights, man, very similar to the was it at Anfield where we had the opportunity to play a last-minute passing. I'm either confusing it this season with last season, but I look at that now and it's like the first touch, could it have been better to then free Martinelli? I don't know where Ortega's position was if he'd have got it, but that's what I'm now looking at. And then there's one specific moment that really wound me up. I forgot who passed it into him, but Trossard was in a really nice pocket in the half space. And I want to say it was either Gabriel or Partey or someone passed it into him, like let's say shin height, and he flicked it. And it was really late in the game. And I was just thinking, why have you flicked that? He had no one around him. That was something where you control the ball, turn, and you never know what could have come from that. But unfortunately, he just flicked it and we lost the ball and then we were on the back foot. So I was disappointed with that. But yeah, again, I think I'm forgiving of his decision making on that final one when he got the ball and he ran and he tried to have an attempt because, yeah, I don't know. It's always easier said than done to actually say, oh, yeah, you should have played that pass. I don't know what the angles look like for them when they're actually on the pitch. But yeah, I thought this was just a game where we managed the game through substitutes perfectly. I thought Arteta's subs were absolutely bang on. Like I said, the way he reacted to what City did, bringing on Partey Tomiyasu, Jesus clearly ran out of steam. There was an opportunity to go for it there. Martinelli clearly wasn't quite ready, so he went Trossard, natural. Saka was enforced off, and Martinelli then came on. But for me, it was that Partey Tomiyasu subs that filled me with confidence in terms of the ability to change something and maintain that level, if not get stronger off the bench and give us different options for this run in, which we're really going to need. So yeah, all in all, it's a big point away from home. And I'm just, in the context of a title race as well, just so impressed with what we managed to limit them to. See who's in the chat. We've got a few people watching live. So if you've been enjoying this, please obviously give the stream a like, hit the subscribe button. We've committed to doing a review and a preview pod for every single game until the rest of the season. So your support along the way would be much appreciated. If you're listening back on podcast, please drop us a review. That helps us a lot as a small fan-led channel for discoverability, helping other Gooners find out what we're about. But yeah, just looking in the chat, got Uncle Mike in. Afternoon, lads. We needed to string more than 5 passes together. Struggled at times. That's exactly it for me. Yeah, feel like there were too many times where we got the ball and we weren't able to string more than 5 together, and we lost it quite quickly. And Uncle Mike also says really missed the Martinelli outball. Completely agree. It's such a shame. I know City had their own injuries and Walker being out and Stones, even though he was ruled out. Oh, surprise, he was on the bench, and I know he didn't come on, but still, we had our own. Like I say, if Partey was fit enough to start, if Martinelli was fit enough to start, or if Martinelli was fit enough to just come on instead of Trossard, like you never know. It's these chess games where the margins are so tight. Uncle Mike, 2 seasons ago, we were getting beat 4 and 5-0 away at Liverpool and City. Now we are taking 4 out of 6 points. It's so true. And this is why I will not have anyone giving us slander. Like, there's one thing in taking 4 points from both of them. There's the manner of it as well. Like, we haven't just shithoused our way here. We beat, like, both games against City were tight. I'm not going to pretend we battered them at home, but they won the treble last year. Liverpool, as I said earlier in the show, away game, sure, tight. We rode our luck in periods. That's football. Home game, we fucking battered them, played them off the park. So it's incredible what we're doing. And it's just one game at a time FC for us, I think. Like, there's going to be twists and turns. Liverpool obviously in pole position now. I'd say we have the toughest run-in between the 3. I'd say Liverpool and City's is fairly similar. City's maybe slightly... Liverpool's maybe slightly better, but lots and twists and turns, yeah. But if I had to just summarize before I get out of here, I'm just so proud of this team. Like I said at the start, just watching them go from boys to men, where we do not have that soft underbelly. And do you know what? I said this earlier in the season. The way we're playing makes me so much more confident for what we can do in the Champions League. we can completely shut out teams. And again, like the whole narrative of like, oh, are you not disappointed by Arsenal yesterday? No, I would be disappointed if we played like this every week, like Spurs under Conte. This was a specific game plan that was set up to give Arsenal the best chance of winning against probably the toughest fixture in world football, City away. And we almost did it. Like if Trossard plays that pass into Martinelli, if he slots it in, we're walking away and we're saying that was a tactical masterclass, which I think it was anyway, even if we didn't get the full 3 points. And City, like, fuck their fans, man. I've seen a lot of them. Like, we've a lot of the times this season had to face the same problem, right? And I don't know. I need to be careful what I say here, but most of the time I'd say when you're playing a team like Arsenal, you have to play the way you play to nullify them. And you like if you go out there naively and you play a basketball game like Liverpool do, Tottenham do, that's not going to be the most sustainable way of yielding points, is it? So for me, I'm so proud in the maturity. And Uncle Mike says it as well. They don't like the fact we are back. It's so true. People just want to see us like a little laughing stock, right? And we are back. So yeah, let's but like I said, it makes me really encouraged for what we can do in the Champions League, because you look at that Porto game where we can ride it out. Sure, there needs to be a little bit more if we're going to approach games like this. I think we need to be able to create slightly more higher volume of clear chances, because then if you're riding it on penalties and stuff, that is going to be tight. But in the defensive standpoint, my God, man, I think we can shout out almost anyone. Hopefully we don't have to go back and play City over 2 legs, though, because that is going to be emotionally draining. I also, just before we get out of here, I had a bit of a clanger with my ticket situation. I'm not going to go into detail on what happened there, but I'll tell some of you when I see you in person or speak to you. But yeah, I managed to get in, though. Let's just say that. So all is well and good. But yeah, thanks a lot for tuning in, everyone. Really appreciate it. I will be back, I think, with Nima, actually. We're either going to do a preview for the Luton game tomorrow or on Wednesday. So I'll send out a tweet on when that will be. But like I said, we're doing a preview pod and a review pod for every single game until the end of the season. So join us on the run-in as we hopefully make history. But one game at a time. Cheers for tuning in, everyone. Up the Arsenal. Come on.